My friends, holiday hosting is upon us. Whether you're hosting Friendsgiving, Thanksgiving, a casual Monday night with your neighbors, or just a family dinner, today we're gonna walk through a bunch of different table setting options, from paper plates all the way up to a fancy look. I was gonna say a fancy look, but I'm not really a very fancy person, so I don't know that we'll actually get to fancy, but it's gonna look nice and polished, beautiful, and affordable. Let's do it. Now, I've talked a lot about intentionality in hosting in many of my YouTube videos since July, when I hosted a bunch of your favorite YouTubers here at my house. And I just really like to kind of hit home on what does it mean to have intentionality in our hosting. And I think that as we enter a holiday season of hosting that can sometimes be stressful, depending on your own expectations and the expectations of others, it's good to kind of set the tone for your own expectations, set the tone for the expectations for your guests, and hopefully that makes things go a little bit more smoothly. And sometimes that just means great communication, a casual environment, telling people what you're planning ahead of time. It does help. But really presenting an air of peace in your own home as you invite people in. If you're really nervous, people can tell. And if you're at peace and relaxed, it puts them at ease. So that's something that I've been practicing in my own hosting, because I used to be a really anxious hoster. Like, everything had to be perfect and everything had to be like white glove clean. And let me tell you what, that is not the way to go. Let me tell you a quick story before I get into the Tablescape. When I was hosting my friends from YouTube here this summer, Sarah from She Holds Dearly, not me, Sarah Phillips, she had some extra time with me one-on-one when we were waiting for her flight to take off. Now, Sarah is about one step ahead of me in the parenting timeline. I have teens, but she has kids who've actually left the nest. And so I said to her, do you have any advice for me on this parenting phase of teenagehood? And she said, make the tea. And so of course I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, when my kids had something and I knew that they needed to talk, I would tell them, let's have some tea. And I would sit them down at the table. And in the amount of time that it would take me to put water on, boil the kettle, get the tea together, pour it, let it steep, it gave them time to process what they needed to talk about before I sat down and dove into it with them. And then once the tea was ready, you have the time it takes to drink a steaming cup of hot tea or hot chocolate, whatever your kiddo likes. And we just sat and discussed, and it was very intentional and it was very slow and nothing was rushed and it was peaceful. And I just thought, that is some wisdom right there. So I bought a tea kettle. I didn't have one before. Now, that is the kind of intentionality that I want, not just with my kids, but with whoever I am inviting into my home. And part of setting that tone of peace and relaxation and no anxiousness and no pressure is just creating a really welcoming environment. So let's get to that today. Now, thank you to Wayfair for sponsoring today's video as we head into all these Tablescape options. If you are looking for some new pieces before the holidays, this is the time to buy. October 26th through the 29th is their Way Day sale. It's one of the biggest sales of the year, up to 80% off plus free shipping. And the items that I got today are part of their linens and their kitchen and tableware. So beautiful. I can't wait to show you this piece specifically. But the kitchen items that we most often use for serverware, for dishes, for baking, and all of the things that are just really beautiful are up to 60% off So make sure and check that out. I'm going to show you some platters that I have and some options for serving today. For serving, I really like these kinds of classic platters that have just a little shimmer and shine that dress it up just a little bit without it being like super fancy, so you can still use it for every day if you need to. Serving trays like this tiered tray are a really great option. You can do muffins on it, or you could do charcuterie, you could do little mini desserts on it, things like that. And this comes in a bunch of different sizes. Or if you want to make it a little bit fancier, then a marble cloche here would be great for cheeses or cheesecake or other things that you kind of want to keep cold, because it can go in the fridge, the marble gets cold, and then it stays cold for whatever you're serving. And this just dresses it up a little bit more than normal. And then obviously table linens go a long way, but I really like to do runners on top of plain tables because it adds in a little bit of pattern and fun, but you can also use it very easily for everyday looks too. So make sure, check out, I'm gonna link up a bunch of my favorites from Wayfair in the description. October 26th through the 29th, up to 80% off, plus free shipping. Make sure and shop the Way Day sale. Now let's talk purpose of the Tablescape. Are you hosting a casual get-together? Family dinner? Are you hosting your neighbors? Are you hosting the boss? Are you doing a Friendsgiving? Is it Thanksgiving? Is it something that's really extravagant, or can you use paper plates? These are all things that I like to start with because otherwise I get overwhelmed really easily. And so I want to look at the purpose of the gathering over the Tablescape itself, because I think the purpose of the gathering actually leads us into how elaborate the Tablescape should or needs to be. Now, if you've watched my videos for any length of time, you know that I don't like doing dishes. I like to use paper plates for a lot of my hosting. It's just easier, and you can find really nice, pretty paper plates that are sturdy. But there are obviously some instances where it makes more sense to use real dishes. So I always like to have 2 different color dishes, always a white, a neutral, and then you can easily pop in a color that fits either the season or just your own personal taste. Let's take a real quick look. I love this so much because it's my color. I love green. So we can do a couple of different options. We can do this. And layer the color like a sandwich. Or we can just use the white plate more as a charger and bring a little bit of texture with this wavy color, and then also dimension. You can do it like that. Or we can do it like this. And the top bowl is the dimension that you want. Just depends on the style and the taste. Of course, you can also do a fully matching set. No problem with that. But I kind of just like to mix up the color because it makes the table pop a little bit more. Now, the reason that I keep hitting on intentionality with the story about my kiddos and the tea and really defining the purpose of your gathering is because so often I think that we get really caught up in the way that everybody else expects a gathering to look. The tablescape has to look a certain way, and the house has to look a certain way, and you have to serve certain foods. And I think that that just has stifled true, authentic connection in people, because all of the focus has become about the stuff around us rather than the people with us. And so I'm kind of just trying to reframe our starting point for gathering from the things that we are decorating with, even though this is a decorating channel, to why are we doing it in the first place? And I think that that really gives us a lot more perspective and probably peace over hosting in general. I just love this beautiful runner so much. A lot of people probably wouldn't choose it for like a Thanksgiving tablescape because it's kind of a springy green, but I think that it's perfect because I can layer in other colors and it's a really subdued backdrop rather than being like a really overt color, so I can use it season after season after season. It'll go for spring, definitely goes for fall. I think I could make it work for Christmas and for sure for summer. So I like to buy things that I can use year round and aren't like super season specific. Now this is one option to start the table with just the runner, very simplified option. My husband went to a work event and he actually brought home this centerpiece and I thought it was so pretty and subtle and simple and would be really, really nice for a dinner party because it's low, which a lot of times is kind of hard to accomplish. A low centerpiece that's also really pretty, but this is a total underrated flower. Look at how beautiful that is. We're gonna put it right here in the middle. How simple is that? I could literally be done right now with just this. Now this is the route that I would go if I were doing a really casual, laid back, maybe neighbor get together, Friendsgiving even. And instead of setting the whole table, I'm just gonna give you this example and then we're gonna go on to the next stage of fanciness. Now an instant elevator of any table is linens. One tablecloth or runner can do for you the same as buying all new dishes and Serverware. In fact, you don't even need a real table. You just need like a card table and then linens and it'll look fancy and it'll look beautiful. Ooh, stay. This is the most overlooked part because sometimes we tend to think, oh, what if, the kids spill on it, or what if, a glass of wine gets knocked over. Well, then you wash it and it's fine. No big deal. Ugh, of course, it's so wrinkled. It's gotta go in a refresh. Hold on. There we go. Nothing a little steam cycle in the dryer won't fix. Not perfect, but better than it was. So we obviously have an option to do just the single tablecloth, or we can do layers. Layers are always good. Layers are the next step to elegance. Lots of layers. Now let's imagine that we put that pretty centerpiece back on here with the pumpkins and whatnot, and you have option number 2 of creating a tablescape. I like the layers. I think it dresses it up a lot for almost zero effort. Plus, depending on your dish choice, it also adds another layer of dimension. So now we get the picture. I'm going to start a completely new idea. I just want to show a variety of really simple options. Now, in my opinion, the easiest centerpiece that you'll ever do is a pre-made wreath. I mean, you could make it yourself for sure, but why when you can just buy one? I think there's lots of value in DIYing wreaths. I've done it myself for years, but sometimes it's just really easy to buy one when they're on sale. Now you can grab a wreath, put whatever you want in it. These are too big, but you get the picture. You could easily do some cutie pumpkins in the center. Oh, that's cute. You need one more here, or candle. Why do I even have this massive candle? I don't remember buying it. But it makes for an easy little accent here. I'm gonna shove it right in to give you 3 heights. You definitely, if you're gonna do a vignette like this, you want 3 different heights. So I've got tall, medium, short. This one needs to go a little lower. And centerpiece, done. Now, some pros about options like this is that it is a substantial centerpiece. It's pretty visual, it's appealing, but it also gives you still some space for Serverware like this, and you obviously have your place setting spots still available. The other benefit is that if you do need to remove the centerpiece for your food, then it's pretty easy to disassemble and remove, especially if you put it on a tray. So if I had a tray like this under there, I could just pick the whole thing up in one piece and place it where I need to. I think I really love this big candle. I don't know where I got it, but I'm glad I have it. The next and final option is gonna be a little bit more elaborate for those who want it kind of fancy. Now this one, I kind of feel like a runner down the middle would be really pretty, but I wanna show it without first because you can always add a runner, and that's a really specific color scheme that will be determined by your own home. And so, you know, whatever runner you have, it will make sense to put underneath of greenery. Greenery always makes sense. I've got 2 of these eucalyptus garlands, and they're kind of unruly and they're not super easy to deal with. So we're just gonna splay them out. Definitely want to go from one end to the other if possible, so I have 2 here. But then I also have a bunch of little cutoffs that I'll stick where I want to hide stems or where it's really sparse, like down on that end. It's almost like there's nothing on that end. So filling in time. I'm gonna make it a little curved here. And obviously this isn't ideal if you have people at the ends of your table. So you just kind of got to play with that. If you do have people who need to sit at the head of the table, which usually that needs to happen, right? Willow, no, get away from that sock. Then just tighten it up. I love 2 options. We can do like little small, these are all battery operated rather than flame. We could do little small pillars scattered throughout, which is really subtle and pretty, or we can do a full-on candelabra. Get that in there, which is a lot fancier. It's kind of too fancy for my personal style, but I wanted to show some different options for those who want a really elegant table. I do love this candelabra. It makes it so easy. It's just one and done. You could even add in a couple of these small ones interspersed throughout if you wanted to after, but I'm gonna simplify. And then we need our color, our fall color or Christmas color, depending on what you're doing. I'm gonna take, these are really whimsy, and just stick them in places. And they are gonna give such a huge pop of color to this table. As much as possible, I like to keep my stems intact and not cut them. So I'm just kind of shoving the stems underneath of the greenery to hide it. Come back over here. Now I'm using this red. I think it goes for fall just fine. It would go for Christmas great, but you can use whatever color you want. Obviously. Obviously. You can do whatever you want. Couple of these I'm gonna pop up and have be like a little floaty. Since it's not real candles, it doesn't matter quite as much. Just make it a little bit more dimensional by bending those stems. Here's our fancy option. It's kind of a foraged look and I like it. I said at the beginning of the video, I am really not a fancy tablescape person. I've just never really desired to put a ton of effort into the tablescape. I would rather focus on the food. And so putting this together was actually really fun to get some creative juices flowing, and I hope that seeing step by step how the layering process works gave you some inspiration as you go about planning your own holiday tablescapes or just intentionally gathering your loved ones for a simple meal. I think we're gonna have dinner with this tablescape tonight. I put all the effort in and may as well enjoy it with the families. One thing that I do love about this tablescape is that it could actually be 100% foraged if you have similar looking things in your area. Greenery is really easy to go snip off of bushes, drying leaves. These might be a little bit more difficult to get something similar, but there's definitely lots of berries this time of year. So you could do a pop of color with some dried berries, and this could be 100% free if you just go out and put a little bit of effort into foraging in your own backyard. I would love to know which style is your favorite. Do you love a really simple one centerpiece option? Do you like a little bit more layering with the wreath? Do you like this full-on tablescape look that's very kind of wild and whimsy? Or do you like something completely different? Drop it in the comments and we can inspire each other with new ideas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you will like and subscribe and that you enjoyed today's video. I will see you next week.